We are in the stretch run, election day, less than 2 weeks away. Amazing to even think that we've gotten to that point. How do you feel at this moment in time?
I'm feeling actually quite good and optimistic. As a Democrat, not a lifelong Democrat, but as a Democrat for many, many years, Democrats are notorious for not agreeing with one another. And we wrestle and discuss and all this sort of thing. And the mere fact that Kamala Harris has suddenly been brought forward. She's standing there. We're all together behind her, and she has the background that just, it's unbelievable and absolutely marvelous. And so I'm feeling very good about this election.
Before we jump into your race, you mentioned the vice president. How do you kind of see things on the national level in terms of people being cordial? It seems like maybe still we need to bring down the temperature a little bit, and it seems like that would be a good thing for everyone across the country.
From your lips to God's ears. That is the one thing. I have a friend who's taking a course on compassionate conversations, and I told him when he finished the course I want to talk to him because it's important to listen, because like every family we have all kinds in our family, and the relationships we have to keep together because those are things that will last our lifetimes, but it's been kind of tough.
One quick side note, I would imagine you watched it, but it was very cordial between JD Vance and Tim Walz during the vice presidential debate, and it would be nice to see some more of that.
Oh, yes. I've had some young people tell me that they've gone back and watched the presidential debates of the past and couldn't believe how polite they were to one another. And I'm saying, you don't know this, but that's the norm.
Well, who knows? Maybe that will become the norm. Hopefully,
Yes.
fingers crossed. So, District 71, currently led by Stan Lambert. How do you
Yeah.
feel your chances are? Do you feel it's an uphill battle? Where do you kind of stand and assess the situation right now?
Well, I know it's an uphill battle. I believe in miracles. I know that traditionally the Democrats for this office get about 20% of the vote. And so I'm not unrealistic, but I will say that I'm I'm feeling optimistic, and we'll see how, not just me, but how well the Democrats do in this particular election. Now, Stan and I agree on one thing that is absolutely essential for West Texas, and that is that school vouchers will decimate our rural schools and small town Friday night lights kind of loyalty thing. That's no place where our tax dollars should go, because it will be completely useless for most of the rural families here in West Texas and will not be good for the public schools anywhere in this area. So we agree on that.
If school vouchers were to pass, and you are not the only person from West Texas that has expressed those sentiments, do you
That's
see
right.
maybe public schools in our area closing, schools having to merge? What is kind of this worst case scenario you see on the horizon?
I would, well, even if you merge schools, those are long, long bus rides for children. I mean, we've got a lot of geography here, and it makes no sense even for kids in urban areas, because the very phrase school choice that they talk about like it's a good thing means exactly that. The schools will choose which students they want to be there, and their choices will take away some of the more important students who can help other students. And it basically boils down to a windfall gift to parents who already afford to have their children in private schools. And that seems to me just totally wrong for Texas. One of the things that struck me about the governor's proposal was that parents would get $10,000 per child to go to a private school. No questions asked, no, what was the school, nothing that they had to do. But the public schools only got $6,700 per child. If we've got $10,000 to spend, for crying light, spend it in the public schools so that, and watch the improvement happen, because that to me was just absolutely astounding.
$10,000 is a lot of money. Could definitely help a
It's a
lot of
lot of
people and a
money.
lot of kids.
Talk about a welfare queen when you've got a family getting money like that and they don't have to report anything except they say I went to school.
Well, we will see where the battle over school choice goes and vouchers goes, that's for sure. Now, one of
Yeah.
the top issues on your website is women's right to choose. We know
Yes.
that that is an issue not just in Texas, but
Yes.
nationally as well. What kind of changes would you like to see here in the Lone Star State to help West Texans and really people across the state?
I would like to see that bill repealed. The Roe v. Wade was a decision that divided up the responsibilities and the rights, and actually took in the rights of the mother and the potential child by dividing it up. First trimester would be nothing. That's strictly her, that she makes that decision. And obviously with her family, her pastor, her doctor, on all those things. The middle one was in that area you're talking about. At some point, this child is viable. And at that point, there are some rights that go to that child's example. Now, interestingly, I had an Old Testament professor for a Sunday school class once. And in the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures, life does not begin at conception, it begins with breath. And that's like Adam and then the dry bones. It was only the breath of God made them alive. That is still the Jewish perspective, that life begins with breath. And so when you talk about viability, to me, that means this child could breathe if he or she were born today. And that's an important thing. There's also a section in Leviticus, which I'm sure you read often, and it is rules in the Torah about different things in life. And one of them is, if two guys get in a fight, and in the fight, a pregnant woman is injured and miscarries, if the pregnant woman is all right and the child is born prematurely and dies, that is like a civil problem, and they have to pay a fine to basically the father for the future earnings that he's not going to get. If the mother is injured, however, now you're into an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That now you're into a criminal possibility. And I think Texas has stepped over that by criminalizing the woman's behavior and anyone who wants to help her. And she's the real citizen. She's the live, breathing human that is now apparently going to be allowed to bleed out in the bathroom of an emergency room while they try to decide if she's close enough to death. They can actually do what in the old days would have been done immediately to save her life and take care of things. So I'm old enough to have been pre-Roe, Roe, and post-Roe, and post-Roe is worse than pre-Roe.
We will see where things go. Certainly one
I
of the
know,
top
I
issues
know.
in many elections, yours, national, Senate races,
Oh,
whole thing. Do you feel like West Texans, your district, have their voices heard enough in the Capitol?
That's hard for me to judge because I realize that basically, as a democracy, it is people, not geography, as to how we vote and how we govern. But it's very important that the people in the cities understand what they are getting from West Texas, uh, including electricity and oil and gas and those kinds of things, but also farm products and a certain level of Texas expectations for a culture that can be important. And you can't not, we got to cooperate, and you can't just rest everything on urban problems and not look at our rural hospitals, for instance, our lack of doctors in different areas. And we are having such a problem with healthcare, which is actually the main reason I ever ran for this office was Medicaid expansion is so essential for the health of so many people. And Texas is now down to the last 10 states that have not done that. Even Oklahoma has done that. And we're just slow learners on that. And when my opponent voted against the Medicaid expansion in 21, that's when I snapped and said, I'm going to run.
I assume it's fair to say then you find healthcare concerns to be the biggest issue in West Texas at the moment. How do we attract more doctors? How do we attract more nurses? How do we get people to come to this part of the country and lend their expertise and not stay for a few years, not stay for 5 years, but really set up roots and become a viable health option for people?
Interesting that you should ask, because one of the things that has begun to happen here, and it's not just in Texas, it's in many other states, young doctors to be are not applying in places where strict abortion laws are being enforced. They are not wanting to move to a place or study in a place where there's a possibility they could go to prison for something that 20 years ago was normal medical care for someone in a desperate pregnant situation. And so that is not going to help us out at all. As far as the future, my own granddaughter is in medical school, and I would like for her to have come to Texas and be near grandma, but she did not apply to Texas. And so she is not the only one in that kind of situation. So that's pretty bad. We have had in the past, way past, the agriculture department, I think, that would bring doctors into rural areas and supplement their income so that they would stay in those areas for, I think it was 5 years or something like that. And I actually have a doctor for whom that was done, and he was brought from England, and he ended up not staying 5 years, but staying for the rest of his practice. So it is a good thing to bring them, and we are welcoming people in West Texas, basically. And so we're glad to have them.
Anything I didn't ask you or bring up that you wanted to get across at all?
Uh, well, education is part of the voucher thing. And I wanted to be sure that this whole book banning and Bibles in the school and all that kind of stuff, that we don't ooch over into a little bit of this everybody likes this, everybody wants this. I am not comfortable with that because I see our founding fathers, when they came to, and mothers, when they came to America, we had Catholics and Mennonites, and we had Quakers, and we had Baptists, and we had Puritans, and they all came from Europe where they had been fighting for 1,000 years. And when they came to America, they're going, we're not going to do that. And they worked out a way for all those religions to be free and not have the kind of viciousness that they were used to. And that is absolutely, that wall of separation is extremely important for us. So, I mean, I have a long list, gun safety and, but just for right now, the healthcare and the vouchers in education are really important for West Texas.